Welcome to Let's Talk Portsmouth, a new communications enterprise developed by the City of Portsmouth's Marketing and Communications Division. If you're interested in Portsmouth news and information, public concerns, and other relevant topics that could impact your life, Let's Talk Portsmouth is the podcast for you. We'll talk city business, including interviews with city administrators, hold discussions with civic and community organizations, and converse with newsmakers from around the state on topics close to home and heart. Now, here's your host, Sharon Hoggart.
Welcome, everyone. This is Let's Talk Portsmouth, the podcast that's all about news you can use. Our goal, to enlighten, educate, and bring you solid information and facts that will help you make the best decisions for yourself, your family, and the community you reside. I'm your host, Sharon Hoggart from Portsmouth Marketing and Communications Department. For more information about the city or the region, just follow us on Twitter at City of Ports VA and on Facebook at facebook.com/Portsmouth, Virginia. In a recent tweet posted by reporter Joe Fisher of WRAL TV, he said, and I quote, "More people are dying, kids are dying." And this was in regarding the opioid epidemic. The tweet cited 3,691 people who died in North Carolina of overdoses and poisonings. 80% of those deaths involved fentanyl. 80% of those deaths involved fentanyl. Today on the podcast, we're going to discuss fentanyl and the crisis caused by this very potent drug in the U.S. We're interviewing Dr. Portia Porter with Portsmouth Department of Behavioral Healthcare Services. Dr. Porter, welcome. And before we get started with our interview, tell our audience a little bit about your educational background, where you went to school, and how you came to work for the Department of Behavioral Healthcare Services.
All righty. Hello, I'm Dr. Porter. I currently have a bachelor's in psychology. I have a master's in social work as well as a doctorate in social work with a specialization in disaster crisis and intervention. I went to undergrad at the University of Toledo in Ohio, and also went to Walden University for my master's and doctorate. I have been at Portsmouth Behavioral Healthcare Services for about 2.5 years. I worked at another community services board and then came here. Just wanted a different change of pace. And so I started here in our intake department, which is our same day access department, as one of the clinical assessors, as well as therapists.
Okay. Well, we are so glad that you are here, and we're going to be talking with you the next hour on a different topic. But anyway, let us move ahead. According to the Department of Justice, Drug Enforcement Administration, fentanyl is about 100 times more potent than morphine. Let me say that again, folks. 100 times more potent than morphine and 50 times more potent than heroin. The qualifier in this note was where fentanyl is used as an analgesic. So, Dr. Porter, what exactly is fentanyl and what is it primarily used for?
Okay, sure. So fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. So it's another pain management medicine that people use or that are prescribed. So it could be after surgery or maybe chronic pain that they have. So it has been prescribed, but it is an opioid.
Mm-hmm. And so it's a legal prescription drug, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And a type of opioid. So what are some of the brand names for fentanyl, for a fentanyl prescription?
Antique.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Duragesic and Sublimase, as well as Centora and Abstral.
Okay. I thought that was important for the audience to know. So if they got a prescription, if they saw that brand name come across, they would know what it was.
Oh, yeah.
So can a patient being treated for pain after surgery, chronic back pain, etc., develop a tolerance for fentanyl?
Yes, they definitely can. Because like we said, it's more potent than like your average or your more prescribed like morphine. Because so it is more potent, so they can develop a tolerance, which then makes them want to use it more. Or if it helps them really well with their pain, if they stop using it, they can go into withdrawal.
That's kind of scary and reminds me of people shooting up in the back alleys and stuff. Withdrawal.
Mm-hmm.
So if a patient So what happens when a patient develops a tolerance then for an opioid like fentanyl? Does the doctor, if they report it, does the doctor prescribe something else, or how is that managed?
So if they do, develop a dependence, they will probably refer them to a outside clinic where they can then be prescribed like methadone or Suboxone, which is another type of medicine, but it has less. It's not as addictive, and it kind of helps the harm reduction piece. And so then they can kind of taper off of that to a lower dose to where it's not. They can come off it and doesn't have the withdrawal effect. Because usually if they find out that they are addicted or that they're dependent, they will stop prescribing. But then again, like I said, they can send them into withdrawals. And so if they're not going to get it, then they may try and get it on the street. And so it's it's better to refer them out to an outpatient clinic or inpatient clinic to where they can get it managed with another substance.
All right, let's talk about, explain to our audience what the difference is between substance use disorder and addiction, or are they the same? And are we using euphemisms to talk about drug addiction? What's the difference?
So there's not very much difference. I think back in the day, maybe there was. It was like, oh, well, if you're addicted, then it means you're this. But now it's just all substance use. So the biggest thing is that whether the substance that's being used is causing some kind of significant impact in that person's life. So like marijuana, for example, people are like, yeah, I can smoke it and it doesn't do anything, and I can go to work and I can still do my daily activities. Okay, that's different. Whereas like heroin or fentanyl, if you're using that, you're spending all your money. You may end up homeless. You're losing your job. People don't want to be around you. So then that's causing a significant impairment. So that would be a substance use disorder, which would also be considered addiction.
Addiction. Okay. All right. So let's talk about there was a lot of information about counterfeit fentanyl. What role does counterfeit fentanyl pills play in fatal overdoses?
Oh, I would say they play a big role. We get a lot of people who, when they come through, just like even our program, they ask them like, how much have you taken, or what's your average? And they're like, oh, I take this many caps, in other words, for capsules. So people are making these pills, and they're saying some people are believing that they're heroin or even other type of medications, and they're actually not. They have fentanyl mixed in them. And so people always know that they're taking fentanyl. And I think that's the biggest thing. And then they find out, oh, they had fentanyl in it. It's like, yeah, it's in everything now. So people are still kind of, I don't want to say
blasé about it. Is it?
Yes, because they're like, no, or it won't happen to me, or I know the person I get my substances from, and that's like, okay, that's good to know. But they're also, you only know them because you're providing them money. I don't think they have a personal care about your life. So if they're going to do something that's going to generate them more profit, they probably will.
And that's really scary too, Dr. Porter. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. Surveys note that the number of adolescents ages 14 to 18 experimenting with drugs actually decreased during the pandemic. If that is true, what is driving the overall overdose deaths to more than 100,000?
I would say, and say glad that the youth number has went down. But I think it's the fentanyl that's being mixed with everything, because before it was, people were just cutting like heroin or certain like cocaine or crack with fentanyl. But now that's not the case necessarily. Now it's like being made with it in there. And it doesn't take a lot to cause an overdose. And so the proportions are off. So people may just be sprinkling it in there or however they're putting in it, but they're not monitoring how much is in there. So you're like, oh, I'm just doing coke and that's fine. But really, you don't know that it's actually mixed with fentanyl.
So the fact that this drug, this opioid, is manufactured, it can be easily counterfeited, can it?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And that is, like I said, I think that's also what's contributing to those deaths. Because then even people now you can buy everything online. And so people are, going online for like Adderall or Xanax or different things that they think that they're getting. Or even somebody, if you're looking for like a prescription and you're like, oh yeah, you buy it on the street because you can't get it from your doctor anymore. And, you're thinking you're taking, like I said, Xanax or something else. And really it's not. It's a pill that's mixed with fentanyl in it.
That's like playing Russian roulette with your life.
Definitely it is.
Buying pills online, I did not really knowing what's in the pill.
Hmm.
Okay. So what role, if any, did the COVID-19 pandemic play in the increase of overdose death, the overdose rate overall?
I think it had a huge impact. And so, like with COVID, you have a lot of deaths. But I think if you take it back even further before the pandemic, a lot of people get into substance use. A lot of it is self-medicating for
Mm-hmm.
different things that have not been resolved or have been taken care of. And so that's their coping skill. Now you give that with people who now can no longer leave the house. Nothing is open. They can't go hang out and socialize. They can't work. Then they already have health issues, and then you have COVID. So then you got death and loss. So it's like, okay, well now I have nothing else to do, or now I really need to deal with this new stressor, and so then I end up using because I have more idle time, or I have more access to this versus more constructive things.
Mm-hmm. And I know you've already answered this question, but I want you to reiterate it for our audience so they can really get a gist of what's going on here.
Oh yeah.
So, a drug such as an opioid painkiller, fentanyl, Xanax. So, a teen or an adult orders online for what they think is a legitimate company. But most of the time, or often enough, that's a counterfeit drug containing fentanyl or a similar synthetic opioid, correct?
Oh yes. And most of these prescriptions are made or developed in other countries, so
Mm,
China, Mexico, India. So really, there's no telling what's in there, and so you are taking a chance with your life essentially because it most time does have fentanyl in it. Because then that means again because it's more potent, that means it's more addictive. And that means you're going to be more dependent on it. So if you don't have it, you're going to go into those withdrawals, which are physically harmful to yourself, and nobody wants to be just uncomfortable, so they continue to seek these prescriptions out. And again, you still don't know what's in them.
So let's talk numbers. How much of an epidemic is the misuse of fentanyl as compared to overall opioid misuse?
So in May of 2020 to April of 2021, 100,306 people died from drug overdoses. In regards to synthetic opiates, primarily fentanyl, that was 64,000 for that time frame.
That time frame.
About what, a year now? So coming this year, I'm sure that number has definitely increased, especially because it's more accessible now and people are finding other ways to get it. And some people, in some cases, have actually wanted to seek it out
Mm-hmm.
because of, like I said, the potency. And so, they develop a tolerance to heroin, and it's not the same anymore. And so now they're like, oh, I know fentanyl is, I only got to take a little bit and it'll give me just the same high. And so they tend to seek that out.
Okay. Dr. Porter, we're going to take a short pause for the call. Stay on the line with us. We'll be right back.
Since 1845, men and women of Portsmouth have stood up for the safety and well-being of their city as police officers. With nearly 20 different units, the Portsmouth Police Department provides a variety of services, including crime prevention and investigation, school resource officers, patrol units, active robbery and homicide units, and a homeless outreach team. If you know someone who would like to join our team as a Portsmouth police officer, contact our recruiter at 757-393-8020, extension 5655. Again, that number is 757-393-8020, extension 5655, or check out our website at portsmouthpd.us. Take your first step to becoming a Portsmouth police officer today.
You're listening to Let's Talk Portsmouth, and we're in our final segment. We're talking about fentanyl addiction with Dr. Portia Porter from Portsmouth Behavioral Healthcare Services. Dr. Porter, how does fentanyl affect the brain?
Okay, so it can cause the brain to become, like, have this euphoric feeling, so people can feel extremely happy. It can cause confusion, drowsiness. It can cause unconsciousness, but it can also cause, like, brain damage and eventually, like loss of cells. So people may not be the same. They may have memory issues, just a change in personality.
Would that take a long period of time for that kind of brain problems to develop, or could it happen with just one dose?
So with like them losing unconsciousness and like, you know, that could actually happen in one dose because they could ultimately end up overdosing and dying. But with the continued use, it will be gradual over time. And depending on how much they're using, how often they're using, that's going to play a part in that as well.
Okay. What are some of the warning signs of addiction to fentanyl or any opioid?
So warning signs are going to be a change in behavior. You're going to see people who are maybe physically sick a lot. They may be nauseous. They may be, like I said, they're physically sick. You may notice that they're sleepy or they're drowsy a lot. And then you're like, you try to wake them. They're not really responsive. They kind of have like that 100-yard stare and they're not really looking at you. It's almost like they're looking through you. It can, and then that's just like the physical aspect. But then if you're looking at the social and emotional, it's loss of revenue, it's loss of income, loss of work. People may end up being homeless because they're not able to pay. Instead, they're now paying for their, their substance use versus paying for their, things that they need. And then family, they may lose family and friends because they don't want to be around them when they're, engaging in these activities.
So is this a new training for first responders? They have to be able to recognize the symptoms of fentanyl and opioid overdose? Is that something new that's just happened in the last few years or so?
Yeah, so what they've been doing, I know like here, they have definitely been trained to like EMS and paramedics to look for an overdose. And so they also keep Narcan on them, which is something that they can use to reverse an overdose. And then the other thing that we have been doing is like a preventative ways if somebody has maybe overdosed or has suspected of, we do peer rounds with the EMTs and paramedics. And so we go out and do outreach and try to get them linked to services, make sure that they have Narcan. We make sure that people who come into our program here at the agency have Narcan. We show them how to use it, what to do with it, and they can come back to get refills if they run out. We provide it in the community, like we do outreach at any events or just kind of canvas and make sure that people have it because it's so common that someone may overdose. Even if it's like you don't know anyone personally, it's just good to have on hand.
Mm-hmm. So if an ordinary person, not an EMT or a non-medical person, suspects that someone has experienced an overdose, what can we do to help?
First thing, they should call 911. And then while 911 is on the way, they can administer the Narcan if they have it. They can try to wake the person up, see if they're able to keep them talking or kind of keep them alert. But definitely give them the Narcan if they have it, and then call 911 first.
Okay.
Because the best thing is try to keep them awake if you can. But the Narcan is the best thing that's going to help reverse that.
So if we know someone in our family, a friend, or other acquaintance that is addicted to opioids, where can we find help for them? And talk about the City of Portsmouth's behavioral health services.
Yeah, so we have, so they can come here to BHS, to Behavioral Healthcare Services, Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 2:30. It's a walk-in basis, and they can get an assessment right then and there. We can also provide them Narcan, and they leave with an appointment. And so then we can get them started into, like, we have what's called medication-assisted treatment here. And so we provide methadone as well as Suboxone as an alternative to opiate or heroin to kind of help them in fentanyl to kind of help ease that transition. And so it's more of it's a harm reduction type of intervention. And with that, they also get therapy because it's good to have both. So medication-assisted treatment includes not just the medication, which is going to be the methadone or Suboxone, but it's also going to be that therapy and case management component because we want to have those behavioral health interventions and that support. Because again, a lot of people who get into, substance use, of course, there's a multitude of reasons, but a big reason that we have seen is like unresolved issues. So it's more self-medicating. And so if we can get to the bottom of, helping process some of that, then we can also target the physical aspect now that they've developed when it comes to using like the heroin and the fentanyl.
Well, that's going to kind of wrap up our interview, but I want to give you an opportunity to share any last thoughts with our audience that you might want to share before we wrap up.
I would just say because it's on the rise, please be prepared. Get Narcan. You don't have to be a client here to ask for the training. If you know somebody who needs assistance, have them come in. Again, like I said, it's a walk-in basis. Even if they don't have any documents, they will still go through the process.
Mm-hmm.
We don't turn anyone away. And so we just kind of expedite them through that process because they are a priority population.
What is the Behavioral Healthcare Services website so people can go online and look up your services?
So that website is going to be www.portsmouthva.gov/behavioral-healthcare.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Portia Porter with the Portsmouth Department of Behavioral Healthcare Services for joining us on this issue of Let's Talk Portsmouth. You've been a jewel.
Thank you.
Okay, that's a wrap for this issue of Let's Talk Portsmouth. Hope we fulfilled our mission to provide you with news and information you can apply to your lives. Visit podbean.com for this episode. Let's Talk Portsmouth can also be found on TuneIn plus Alexa, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Samsung, and Podchaser. Here's your thought for today. The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart. And that's Helen Keller. Until next time, take care. We're out of here.
Thanks for listening to Let's Talk Portsmouth, the podcast that's about the city of Portsmouth and our connections around the globe. Listen and download our next episode for more news you can use and information that may just change your perspective. Find our podcast where you find quality podcasts, the Podbean app, Spotify, and Amazon Music Audible. Until next time, take care.